Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CBI webinar about pulses. We're very excited to have you joining us today, and we hope to be able to share a lot of information with you that you will find useful when you are considering entering the European market for pulses, whichever kind of pulses you may decide to sell to Europe. So my name is Tonia Dappel, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for this webinar today. I am the founder and director of Guide My Growth. I work with African and South Asian companies to help them improve their profitability and generate funding within their business for faster growth. Today, however, my main role is to make sure that the webinar proceeds without any problems and to make sure that you get the information that you need to know everything that you want to know, hopefully, about exporting your pulses to Europe. We are going to be using GoToWebinar today, so there are a couple of things that I would like to talk about in terms of our housekeeping rules, just good to know. For those of you who are not familiar with GoToWebinar, we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. If everything goes well, of course, you can see us and you can hear us, but you cannot communicate with us directly. In case you have any audio problems, please do try to just go out, just leave the webinar and use the same link that you have to come back to the webinar. Usually that solves the problem. If you still have audio problems, then the best thing is to call in by phone. And when you're calling in by phone, it's based on a local tariff, so you're not making any international calls. If you have questions, there is a questions tab, if you're on a laptop, at the right-hand side of GoToWebinar. Since we cannot communicate with you directly, we ask that you put all your questions in the questions tab. Our team is at the back end here and will make sure that we answer as many of your questions as possible during the webinar. And let's see, we have a couple of polls for you as well that we're going to be sharing. And I'm going to start one of the polls very quickly after my introduction, just to see if everything is working correctly and just to get you engaged right from the beginning. And we are recording the session. I think that is good to share with you as well, so that in case you have any problems with your internet connection and you lose the connection or you have to leave the webinar early, then not to worry, we have a recording that you can review at your leisure after the webinar. And finally, this webinar is about the CBI market study for pulses. You are going to receive the slides of the presentation. You are going to receive a link to the market study. You're going to receive a link to, you're going to receive the presentations as in a recording, all the presentations that we share with you today. So basically, we're doing our best to make sure that you have a full package and that you don't miss anything, even if you have to leave early or if you drop out because of internet problems. So I would like to just kick off very quickly with an initial poll to see if everything is working correctly. And the first poll that I would like to launch is this one. Please be so kind as to fill it in, and we're very interested to hear your answer. Are you already exporting to Europe, yes or no? And I see that about 90% of you have voted. Thank you. Just a few more seconds to let everyone have the opportunity to enter their vote. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Thank you for voting, and let's see what the results are. So most of you have not yet exported to Europe before. No worries, you're in the right place. We are going to tell you as much as you need to know about exporting to Europe. Okay, we do have a lot of information to share with you today. As I said, this is a webinar about pulses. And we are going to give you some information about the market potential for pulses, obviously telling you which are the best countries that you might want to target or consider targeting if you're not yet exporting. And our experts are going to be telling you about the main trends that you see on the market. They're going to pay particular attention to the requirements in terms of legal requirements, mandatory requirements, but also some of the additional requirements that buyers have. What do you need to comply with if you want to export to Europe? And we'll also tell you about how the market is developing in the most important countries, and we will give you the option to tell us which countries you want to know more about during this webinar. Not to worry, all the countries are listed in the market study, but in the webinar we will focus on the countries that you prefer. We're also going to look at the main competitors, and we will be hearing from a couple of buyers and the buyers on the pulses market. We're going to be sharing some very practical insights as to what do they pay attention to when it comes to buying pulses from you. So this is your opportunity to connect with them directly. Their contact information will be shared with you as well. And I can tell you already, both of them are looking for new suppliers. So take advantage of that opportunity. Feel free at any time to ask your questions. You don't need to wait. We will have 2 Q&A sessions during the webinar, but you can start asking questions at any time during the presentation. Or if you have general questions, feel free to share them in the questions tab. Before we kick off with our presentation, I would like to invite Arthur to come online. Arthur is Program Manager at CBI, our host, and the how do I say that? The person, the organization responsible for the market studies that are published online. Arthur, would you like to say a few words to our audience?
Yes, Tonia, of course. Could you perhaps share the rights to me?
There you go.
There we go. Okay, so good morning, everyone, all participants from Europe and Africa, and a good afternoon to participants located in Asia. Let me start by thanking all of you for being here today with us. I would also like to send out a special welcome to the many private and public sector partners that have shared the invitation to this webinar among their members. And of course, a very warm welcome to you, the many exporting companies that are joining us today. I checked the registration for this panel discussion this morning, and I saw that we have many exporters from producing countries in Asia with us today. Most notably, I saw that we have a lot of participants from India and from Indonesia, but also from other places in Asia. And I also saw that we have quite some African entrepreneurs with us, in particular from countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Egypt. So welcome to all of you. For the people that do not know me, my name is Arthur Scheinert, and as program manager, I'm responsible for CBI's market research in the sector grains, pulses, and oilseeds. And just a few words for listeners that are completely new to CBI. Let me shortly introduce to you who we are and what we do. So CBI is an acronym. It stands for the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. As you can see on the slide, we are a Dutch government organization, and we are funded by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we consider it our mission to connect small and medium-sized enterprises like yourself to the European market and to create sustainable and inclusive economic growth. And the way we do this is by strengthening sustainability of SMEs in developing countries. We encourage exports of value-added products to Europe and also to the local regions. And we help to find practical solutions to bottlenecks in the export value chain. And as you can see, one of the bottlenecks in the export value chain is a lack of good market information. That's where we come in, and this brings me also to the goal of today's session. So in particular, these last 3 months of this year, we are organizing a number of sessions, online webinars like today's. Today, we are focusing on the pulses sector, and together with a panel of experts that will be introduced to you shortly, we'll explore the export potential of different pulses. And in particular, we're going to look at pigeon peas, mung peas, and lentils. So why do we do this? The main reason is transfer of knowledge. So we do a lot of research, and we have many market researchers and experts working for us. And they, in turn, are also in close contact with European importers who work with companies like you on a daily basis. And with these webinars, we ask them to share their best tips and practical advice with you. So we hope that today's panel discussion will give you new ideas, that it will help you discover the potential of the European markets, and that it will help you to take steps to improve and prepare your business for your next export success. I wish you all a very good session. Back to you, Tonia.
Thank you very much, Arthur. And waiting for my screen to come back online. There we are. And before we move into our very first presentation, I'm going to introduce our speakers. And for our speakers, I'm going to ask you to switch on your camera so that our audience can see you as I introduce you. I will unfortunately not be giving you the time to really take a long time to introduce yourself. Jelle and Martin, may I ask you to come online as well with your cameras? And as you can see, dear audience, we have Barbara and Diana joining us today. Both of them are from Profundo. Barbara is a senior supply chain researcher who worked on the market study. And Diana is, I have to peek a little bit, Diana coordinates Profundo's value chains and human rights research. And she also organizes the company's field research activities. She also worked on a market study. Jelle and Martin are our buyers and traders. And you will be hearing more from them as well as an introduction, but to make sure that we don't start with a delay, I'm just going to say that Jelle is from Aver Specials, Managing Director, and Aver Specials is specialized in bean sprouts for mung beans, while Jelle is a trader at Lentils Portman, who is an importer of food and feed ingredients. And both of them, as I said earlier, are very interested in meeting you and finding new suppliers. We are going to go forward and start with Barbara's presentation. So the rest of us are going to switch off our cameras. And Barbara, I think I'm going to say the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tonya. So as was already mentioned, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the market situation for pulses in Europe. Dried pulses is what we're looking at. If you look at Europe as a whole, there is certainly potential for higher consumption than what we currently see for pulses in general. There is traditional consumption of, for example, brown lentils, also beans and other varieties. But if you compare that to other parts of the world, this consumption is still comparatively low, and there is potential to increase that. There is own production, domestic production in several European countries, but even with a comparatively low consumption on average, that is not big enough to fulfill the demand, which means that imports from outside Europe are necessary to fill supply gaps. So as you can see on the right here, I just listed a couple of examples of some pulses with the darker color representing imports from developing countries, while the lighter shades are from other origins. So there are several pulses that are being imported where the share of developing country origins is quite high, actually. You can see that, for example, for kidney beans or for chickpeas, lentils, and mung beans, especially the less traditional varieties for the European palate, like cowpeas or azuki beans or pigeon peas, the share of developing countries is particularly high, even though these are clearly niche products still with relatively small volumes. The next slide, please, Tonya. So if we look at opportunities on the European market for dried pulses, one thing that we see during especially the last couple of years is, and which saw actually an extra push during the Corona pandemic of the last 2-3 years, there is an ongoing trend towards healthier diets, which drives also the demand for plant-based proteins. This is also reflected in the fact that there's a growing number of people that consume vegetarian or even vegan diets, or are increasingly switching to a less meat-based and more plant-based diet. These are again still niches. It's not like meat production is suddenly dropping considerably, but this is a trend that is expected to continue, and you also see that retailers in Europe are increasingly committing to increase plant-based protein offers compared to the animal product-based proteins that they sell. So it can be expected that demand is growing. You also see a growing demand for sprouts, which is a bit of a different niche, especially from mung beans. We'll hear more about that from Jelle in a moment, as well as more innovative and new products, which increasingly are being found in supermarkets, like the picture that you see here on the screen, pasta made from lentils. These kind of products are increasingly found in supermarkets, or chips made from lentils, bean-based burgers. These kind of products are starting to show up much more than in the past. Another important driver are ethnic cuisines, which are very popular in Europe. That's also pushing the demand for pulses. One example are chickpeas in this instance, because the consumption of hummus and falafel to chickpea-based products has increased a lot, and the whole Mediterranean and Arabic kitchen is very, very popular. The same accounts for Indian or Asian cuisines that are also popular and increasingly being consumed. In ethnic cuisines, also the fact that there's large immigrant populations is of interest, because there are especially certain countries with large communities from South Asian or Arabic backgrounds, which have a higher consumption of pulses, including non-traditional varieties. The next slide. We're going to have a brief poll here to see which countries you would be most interested in, since we don't have time to present them all. So I'm handing that to Tonya.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm going to just launch the poll from the back end and ask our audience, would you please let us know which 2 countries are you particularly interested in? Okay, and we're seeing responses coming in. And right now it looks like the Netherlands and Germany, followed by the UK, are the top countries of interest. About 75% of you have voted. So I'm leaving it open for about 10 more seconds to give the rest of you time to enter your vote as well. Okay, I am closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Barbara, these are the results. So as you can see, there's a lot of interest for the Netherlands and for Germany, but there's also healthy interest in the United Kingdom, which I think is not strange, given that the UK is a very important market for pulses. So Barbara, I'm going to ask you to come back and just tell us about these 2, and maybe if you have the time, maybe 3 countries.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Germany. So Germany is obviously a large consumer market in Europe with a large population. Healthy and innovative foods, what I mentioned earlier, are in high demand in Germany. There's in this context, it's also interesting to note that Germany has a large and still growing market for organic food products, which accounts for about 1/3 of the European market for organic products. So in case you are an organic certified producer, Germany certainly makes for an interesting market. The ethnic food market is still growing also in Germany, on the one hand through ongoing growth in communities from other parts of the world where consumption of pulses is higher, but there's also an overall interest in foods from other parts of the world, which offers opportunities for suppliers also of less known pulses than the traditional, like what you see here on the right. It's a more traditional German dish, the brown lentil soup. An important entry point is Hamburg, the port of Hamburg, from where imports like pulses are distributed further, often also to other countries in, for example, Eastern Europe or Southern European countries. And there are several large importers and processors of pulses based in Germany, like, for example, Schlüter and Mark or Müller's Mühle, which process quite large volumes of pulses. And there are as well several importers of products that serve more the ethnic food market, like Indian products and other more exotic in the European sense pulses. If we move to the Netherlands, I'll keep that short because our two industry guests are actually based in the Netherlands. It can maybe also talk a little bit about it. The key role of the Netherlands in the market for pulses in Europe is clearly as a trading hub, which you also see for many other commodities that enter the European market. There's large imports of conventional as well as organic products, but also large exports because the Netherlands is a very important distribution hub with good connectivity from the ports in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, and a very strategic and well-connected transport network. That you can also see in the fact that, for example, talking about pigeon peas as a less known product that enters the European market, they often come through the Netherlands, but then a lot of them are redistributed to other countries, and the actual consumption is not very high than in the country. Traditionally, the consumption of pulses in the Netherlands is not very high. There is consumption, but it's not a very important food product. But you do see growth also in the Netherlands based on these trends that I mentioned before, for healthier food, less animal proteins, more crop-based protein consumption, and also ethnic cuisines becoming more and more interesting. Just very briefly about the UK market, which is a very important market. It's the second largest importer of dry pulses in Europe, which is to a good degree owed to the large ethnic food market, especially Indian food products. That also makes the UK a very important market for less traditionally consumed varieties on the European market. So for the smaller pulses like pigeon peas, cowpeas, and other pulses that are imported in smaller volumes, the UK is certainly a very interesting market. There's many companies that cater to this market, and that would be, certainly something to consider in looking for import partners. And lastly, the UK also has a growing and strong trend to alternative proteins, what I mentioned already, and also the share of people that live on a plant-based diet is comparatively high in comparison to other European countries, which is also offering interesting opportunities for pulses as high protein, healthy products, which also have the advantage of not being as expensive as many other food items. And with this, I'm handing over to my colleague, Diana.
Thank you very much for that, Barbara, for that introduction. And we're seeing some first questions coming in. For our audience, we will tackle your questions during the Q&A session. Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking to you about the requirements to enter the European market. And well, every food product that is sold on the European market has to fulfill very general food safety and quality requirements. And in this context, consumer safety is the most important aspect. So when food products don't comply with food safety standards, the European authorities can impose more strict controls or even prohibit the imports of certain products that don't meet these requirements from the country of origin. And well, the sole responsibility for compliance with the European rules are in the country where these food products come from, whereas the controls occur at the border when they enter the European market. And to meet the safety standards, exporters, well, they have to apply different principles. One of the most important ones is the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, also known as HACCP system. But also the EU food safety standards require you to ensure that the traceability of your product is there throughout the entire supply chain. So some of the most important food requirements include limiting or altogether eliminating the presence of pesticide residues, but also contaminants like metals or stones, and there can be no microbes such as Salmonella or E. coli in the food. If you are delivering packaged pulses directly to wholesalers or retailers in Europe, your product has to follow the Codex General standard for the labeling of prepackaged foods. And you also have to provide information to consumers in Europe, well, following European regulations. I'm going to avoid telling you the regulations because they usually come, you might be familiar, they come with numbers, and this might be confusing, but or difficult to follow. But you can see all of this information on CBI's website. So I'm going to spare you having to follow up with numbers. So when exporters cannot make sure that their products are free from allergens, they have to inform or to make very clear to consumers that there are potentially allergens in the food, and the allergen information has to be highlighted in the ingredient list, as you can see in the picture in this slide. And you can do so, for example, by using a different font or a different letter size or a different background color, just to make it stick out and that it catches consumers' attention. And also exporters have to take into account there are different buyers and different market channels, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about market channels in a moment. And they require different quality grades, so it's not the same grade of quality for everyone. But as a general rule, the food that you export to Europe has to be safe and suitable for human consumption. It has to be free from abnormal flavors and smells. It has to be free from dirt and in amounts that can be harmful to human health. For example, there shouldn't be any dead insects in the food or residues from plants in your product. And they also have to be free, of course, from sand and living insects. The next slide, please. So in 2011, there was an E. coli outbreak that originated in a German facility that was producing seed sprouts. And the outbreak was so serious that the European Food Safety Authority determined that sprouted seeds are ready to eat foods. And for that reason, the presence of pathogens like, bacteria represent a very serious health risk. And since then, the seeds that are intended for the production of sprouts, they have to comply with requirements of 3 different regulations. Again, I won't mention the names, but you can look them up on CBI's webpage. But the regulations, one of them requires that every person that is working in a food handling area has to keep very high degree of personal hygiene and has to wear suitable, clean, and also wear, when it's necessary, protective clothing. And this regulation has to be implemented at every single segment of the supply chain, from field to fork. And to prove that imports from third countries are meeting these regulations, these exporters have to obtain a certificate that is intended for seeds that are intended for the production of sprouts. So exporters of pulses that are going to be used or that are going to be sprouted in Europe, you can't sell those pulses directly to producers, or they cannot do so on their own. To access the European market for sprouts, and I think Jelle is going to talk a bit more about it or more at depth in a moment, but basically what you have to do, exports have to be subjected to a certification system that is verified by the European Union. And for this purpose, there has to be a national control system. So the government of your country has to be involved in this. And that's not always a very easy process, because there has to be dedicated staff that is going to be implementing the controls and also the certification. And there has to be continuous training, not only of the people who are going to be implementing the controls, but also of all the actors along the supply chain. But yeah, I trust that Jelle will be speaking more about it in a moment. The next, please. So apart from the food safety requirements, social and environmental sustainability criteria are becoming more important for European buyers, and especially for European consumers. And European buyers very often require exporters to provide documentation of appropriate standards, and they also have to follow a code of conduct. And these requirements are applicable regardless of the size of your operations. So obtaining certification under a widely accepted voluntary scheme can support you in meeting buyer expectations. And some examples, I realized I put it in the wrong slide, it was 2 slides ago, but some of the recognized standards include the AMFORI, BSCI, the Ethical Trading Initiative, the Global GAP Risk Assessment on Social Practice, Rainforest Alliance, and what have you, if you can go back to the other slide. And then there are also schemes like Fair Trade International and Fair for Life that, well, they dictate fair trade production practices. They're becoming increasingly popular in Europe, but they're still only a niche market. So it's mostly focused on consumers that are socially conscious. Also, as Barbara said before, ethnic food channels are the key selling points for pulses like mung beans or pigeon peas, but also they're an important sales point for lentils. And in this context, obtaining halal or kosher certification can play a very important role for increasing the market demand of your product. And well, also, as Barbara said, the demand for organic products in Europe continues to grow. And if you want to place organic products on the European market, you have to comply, of course, with organic production methods that following European legislation. So basically, any organic exports to Europe have to follow the same rules as those products that are produced in the European Union. Actually, since January 2022, this year, these controls on organic products have become more stricter and this is done in order to prevent fraud. Also, there is gluten-free, well, it's also a niche market, as Barbara said before, but it continues to grow. And because pulses are naturally gluten-free, unless they're mixed with grains containing gluten, like wheat, you have a chance of selling your products in Europe as gluten-free. But to make a statement on your product that it is gluten-free, the food that is sold to the consumer cannot contain more than 20 milligrams of gluten per kilo of your product. And lastly, as Barbara said, the demand for vegan and food is growing, and to assure to buyers or to consumers that your food is vegan, you have to obtain the certified vegan logo. And for that purpose, your food cannot contain ingredients of meat, fish, or any other animal byproducts like milk or like silk or dyes from insects. But also eggs or egg products and well, of course, milk and honey or only honeybee products. So yeah, that's another certification that you can obtain to increase your chances to enter the European market. The next slide, please. So speaking of the different ways you can enter the European market, there are, of course, different channels. You can go through middlemen, like traders or brokers, but you can also go directly through companies that process, package, or market pulses and products made from pulses. And importers usually prefer longer contracts and short supply chains where the collector and the exporter are the same entity. Also, importers and traders with different specializations can play a very important role in bringing your pulses to the European market because they match the demand for a product with a supply that fits the required criteria. So the product can go directly to the end user, or first it can go to resellers. And well, many of the important European trading houses are located in Germany, in the Netherlands, and Belgium. So you all made a good choice when you voted for Germany and the Netherlands, for a bit of information a moment ago. Also, for new exporters that are, well, the best way to enter the European market is to find specialized importer or a broker of seeds and food ingredients, because they can facilitate your market entry and get your product into distribution and the different manufacturing channels. And well, when the processing technology in your country is not yet up to European standards, the best you can do is to find an importer that has its own cleaning facilities. Because, well, those that are very well organized can, and also that are certified, can help you guarantee, or not you, but their clients guarantee a reliable supply of quality product. Now, yeah, as I was saying before, there are more strict conditions for seeds and for pulses that are going into the sprouting segment. So this path, the one that you see on the left-hand side of the slide, is much less straightforward. And well, for exporting seeds for sprouting depends less on finding a buyer, but more on meeting the required food safety standards. And very often buyers in Europe work very closely with exporters of sprouting seeds to make sure that they comply with this safety standards. Now, in terms of end market segments, you can sell pulses like lentils, mung beans, and pigeon peas through the edible seed industry, also the growing plant-based protein industry, as Barbara said before. And lentils and mung beans also have a chance in the sprouting seed industry. Right, I'll give the floor briefly to Sonia so that we can go focus on other countries.
Thank you for that, Diana. And I would like to invite our audience to let us know which of the competing countries you would like to know more about. And Diana is going to very briefly speak about the countries that you choose during the poll. So I'm going to launch the poll right now and ask you to vote. And Diana is going to tell us a bit about the two countries that you choose. And Diana, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to be very brief so that we don't run out of time. Okay, there's a lot of interest in India and Tanzania and Turkey. About 50% of our participants has voted. So I'm going to leave it open for just a few more seconds. Okay, closing the poll in 5. And thank you for voting. These are the results that we see, Diana. So there is, as I said, a lot of interest in India and Tanzania. And since we don't actually have the time to focus on all the countries, I'm going to ask you to just limit it to India and Tanzania and be very brief in your presentation.
All right. All right. So India is a very important exporter of pigeon peas and lentils to Europe. And actually, India is the largest producer and also consumer of pigeon peas worldwide. Actually makes up for 78% of world production in 2020. And well, to meet its demand, India imports a lot of pigeon peas, mostly from countries in Africa, but also from Myanmar. But these imports have been declining about 20% since 2018 because the output of India of pigeon peas has been increasing. So for that reason, the Indian government imposed a temporary import restriction on pigeon peas, and this has been affecting East African suppliers that rely on the Indian market. But yeah, Indian exports of pigeon peas are very small in comparison to its own production and its own imports. So on the small European market for pigeon peas, India is nevertheless a very important supplier and probably everyone's most important competitor. It's not really unclear whether the exports that reach Europe from India are sourced from its own domestic, like from Indians' own domestic production, or they are re-exporting other products from Asia or also from Africa. But yeah, as I said before, the role of India as a supplier of pigeon peas is mostly linked to the community, to the ethnic food segment, especially trying to serve migrants from India that live in Europe. Also, as I said before, India is a very important producer and supplier of lentils. It's actually the second largest producer and consumer of lentils worldwide. This means that the country has very strict policies to meet its own local supply, and it has a lot of conditions that have a very strong influence on the global lentil trade. In 2020, the lentil production of India reached almost 20% of the global output. But the productivity of the Indian lentil sector is below the global average. And yeah, the production of lentils is being affected by climate change, and especially by drier weather conditions. Right. So yeah, also for lentils in Europe, India is only a very small supplier. It provides less than 1% of the entire lentil imports to Europe, but still the United Kingdom is the most important destiny market for Indian lentils. The next one, please. We said Tanzania, right? Right. Yeah, so Tanzania is an important supplier of mung beans and also pigeon peas to Europe. And in terms of mung beans, well, it was only in 2020, in the year 2020, that Tanzania started to become an important supplier to Europe. Yeah, it reflected the increase in production of mung beans that the country had been experienced since the last 7 years. And well, the reason why it couldn't supply more mung beans in the past was that it didn't have very good, or it had very low productivity, but also it had been affected by very serious periods of drought and also floods between 2015 and 2016. But since then, the government has implemented a program where it has introduced more weather-resistant varieties, so that has boosted the productivity of Tanzania. And also, Tanzania is one of the top 5 producers of pigeon peas worldwide. But because India dominates the market, it only accounts for about 3% of the total global output. In Tanzania, Tanzania produces high-yielding varieties that are resistant to wilt, and this has placed the traditional. It has replaced a traditional pigeon pea variety called Babati White. Yeah, so also in 2022, the Tanzanian government started to promote the health benefits of pigeon peas, especially for school children, and this goes with the aim of increasing domestic consumption. Sorry, so it's likely that if this program is successful, a lot of the output of pigeon peas from Tanzania might stay for the local market and not either. Well, it would produce more to export, but it might also stay within Tanzania or even go to supplying regional markets in Africa. Thank you. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Diana. And as I move to our first Q&A session, I would like to ask Barbara, Jelle, and Martin and Diana to come back online. And for our audience, you see me skipping a couple of countries. Don't worry, everyone is described in detail in the market study that CBI will be publishing on the website. And Diana is back as well. Welcome to our panel. I'd like to take just 1 or 2 questions before we move to Martin's presentation, followed by Jelle's presentation. And Barbara, I'm just curious. There was something that Diana said in her presentation about fair trade certification. And how important is it in your opinion? I mean, you are a senior supply chain specialist with Profundo. How important have you found fair trade certification to be in the supply chain?
Yeah, good question. it is still a niche market, and there are also certain countries where it's of more relevance than in others. I would name Germany, the Netherlands, the UK probably as well. But it is catering to a certain group of consumers who are very interested in consuming more socially responsible and are willing also to pay more for the products that they buy. So it is certainly a very interesting market, but you do have to be aware that it's growing, but from a small level still.
Okay. And Martin, is it something that you take into account when you are buying?
Well, if you, for example, the fair trade is also more for countries where they produce, for example, chocolate like Africa, not so much the other origins as that we buy the pulses from. For example, Canada, Turkey, the child labor and the fair trade is not really big of an issue as you might think of in other countries. In the pulses, as Barbara said, it might be a niche. It might be there, but it's not a really big thing, like in chocolate, for example.
Okay, thank you for that. And Jelle, you operate in a niche. So how important is fair trade for you?
For us, it's rather important because our customers know that we are really involved in the whole supply chain, and it's really necessary to try to develop in the positive direction, which is sort of a demand in the European market, that you should not become vulnerable to any negative publicity or negative aura around your whole production supply chain. So for us, it's more and more important, and we are acting in it with really a long-range view. So like we also develop our own product and supply chain, this is also something that you should really build on and work on year after year.
Okay, and I think I know you're going to be talking about that more in your presentation, so we look forward to that. I'm going to take a second question and then we move on to our next set of presentations. And I find this one a very interesting one. It's a question that Mauro asked. From what was just presented, it seems that the demand and outlook for lentils are quite good. The import price, however, is quite low, around €1 per kilogram. Why is this the case? And is the price expected to rise in the coming years? Martin, let's start with you.
Well, the price of lentils, well, we are mostly importing here from Canada, which saw a very dry year last year, which made the prices historically high. This year, it seems that there is a good crop, but they have other issues also, like shipments and supply chain. So that makes that the prices are increasing at this moment, and it seems like there's a lot of demand on the short term. Also, the European market is not really helped by the exchange rate of the dollar, which is 20% different from last year. So that's
okay.
That's making it expensive for imports.
Yeah. And what do you expect? Do you expect the price to rise in the coming years?
I think at this moment it is high. I would say that it should not be as high because there is speculation. But I think this might be more or less a healthy level for everyone, but it should be a little bit lower.
It should be lower than the €1 per kilogram.
Yeah, at this moment, the price have increased the last weeks.
Okay.
So in euros, yeah, it also depends on the exchange rate. So currently we are having high prices again, which we have not seen in the years before.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm just going to put a very quick follow-up question to Barbara and or Deanna, depends on who wants to take it. You've said something about the growth of the market, and basically that the market for pulses in Europe is expected to grow because of the health conscious trend, sustainability, healthy eating, etc., etc. Do you believe that this is going to lead to increased prices, or is it that an additional demand and therefore probably more supply is going to put pressure on prices? Who would like to take it?
Yeah, I can have a try.
Barbara?
Well, I think one factor is that in Europe, consumers see pulses as a comparatively cheap foodstuff. So I wouldn't expect that prices will go up a lot. It's one of the products that people may turn to also if they feel that they have to be a bit more price conscious. Obviously, these products that are coming up more and more, these alternatives to animal protein, they are comparatively expensive. But I wonder if that is actually a price that is also trickling down to the producer level, or whether that is more something that is happening at the processing level in Europe, where these prices are relatively high.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would just like to move forward to our next presentations. And for our audience, there's still a lot of questions coming in. We have a second Q&A session at the end, which is longer, not much longer, but which is longer. And we'll tackle the questions that we haven't responded to yet. But at this time, I would like to introduce Martin. And Martin, as I said at the beginning, is a trader at Lenus van Poortman, part of Group Dipre. Martin, please correct me in a second. An importer of food and feed ingredients, including many types of pulses. And his company works very closely with suppliers in countries of origin. And as Martin already said, they work with a lot of suppliers from Canada, but they are definitely looking for new suppliers. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As Tonya said, I'm one of the responsible traders in pulses in Group Dipre. In this slide, you can see our building and our warehouse, which is based in Dordrecht, which is near to the port of Rotterdam. There we have our warehouse for spices, pulses, dried fruit, seeds. That's our trading activity. Besides that, we have seven, including this one, we have 7 sites producing pet food, like animal feed products and for pets, domestic animals. And besides that, we have trading activities in food and in feed. I'm responsible for pulses in food. If you can go to the next slide, Tonya. These are some of the products that we are trading. You can see the mung beans here. You can see lentils, green lentils, brown lentils, black lentils, etc. And chickpeas, peas. Well, this is mostly part of the pulses that we trade. Next slide, yes. Our company, our trading activities is in Dordrecht, is doing imports. We are doing exports. You saw the picture that we have our storage facility from which we do the distribution throughout Europe. For example, Germany. As previously mentioned, we are a trading hub in the Netherlands with the port of Rotterdam near. So we are distributing a minimum of 1 pallet at least to our customers. On the left, you can see our autoclave, which is with which we are doing high pressure treatment. So that's what we have in-house treatment. It is to kill insects if they are on the products, which is also allowed for organic products instead of fumigation. This is something that we have in Dordrecht. We also do reprocessing, repacking. Basically, we are a one-stop shop for our customers with not only the pulses, but also with other products. The processing can be any type of thing. It can be cleaning, but it can also be the CO2 treatment, for example, and among others. Next slide. Well, what are we looking for in our suppliers? First of all, we are BRC certified company, which means that we prefer to work with suppliers that have BRC, IFS, or FSSC, and we have a strict supplier control. We are sending to new suppliers always our supplier questionnaire, and we ask for HACCP. What's important for us is also the traceability of the products that we are buying. We prefer to buy always from producers or processors, and we do not tend to work with brokers or traders like us. That doesn't really make so much sense for us, and we are very careful about our traceability. In our suppliers, we also are looking for suppliers that are responsible. Anything can happen in this kind of business. You probably all know this as well, even though if you do not tend it to happen, but the issues need to be resolved. So for us, it's very important to have suppliers that are responsible, constructive, and working towards a solution. It happens that sometimes due to long transit, insects are found on the pulses, for example, or if in any case you do find pesticides after every control that you have, you need to resolve it together. If you are a supplier of organic products, of course, we need an organic certificate. We will need your product specification to see if it's matching to our needs, and any other product specific requirements. For example, for the mung beans, if it's for sprouting, then we need the additional certificates, but I'm sure Jelle will tell more about it later. Next slide, please. The product requirements is, of course, suitable for the EU market. It was also told before, 10 minutes before, what requirements we have for the EU market. This is something that you can look up. We need analysis on chemical residues, which is very important for the EU. Of course, free of insects. We need fumigation for the conventional products prior to loading, and we mostly need samples of the products that you are sending to see if it's suitable at least. And in the other case, we need product-specific requirements. Next slide, please. The product application was also shared a little bit before, but mostly it's packaging. You can see the picture here, the packaging which you go into the supermarket. We have canning industry, which is quite big for some products, and we have the industry like soups, for example, which you can see in the picture, or lentil chips. Well, anything you can imagine that's industry. Also, the sprouting, for example, that's falling under the industry. The meat substitutes and the ready-to-eat meals. One thing that was not mentioned previously is about the mung beans, and because we are food and feed trading, this is mostly focused on food, but mung beans are also used in feed applications in mixes. So that's what I just wanted to mention about the mung beans. Well, I want to say that as a trader, as a trading company, we are always looking for new possibilities. Not everyone can be our supplier because there are many suppliers and producers, but usually I want to give everyone a chance and a fair shot to at least present itself and to see if there's something mutual and workable. Good. Thank you. Back to you, Tonya.
Thank you, Martin. And I have a quick follow-up question for you. I'm interested in something that you said. During the Q&A, you said that most of your suppliers or most of your pulses come from Canada, and you are interested in working with new suppliers. So I think I have two questions for you. The first question is, how many suppliers do you currently have in developing countries?
What I was mentioning about Canada was mostly based on the lentils. The lentils are usually coming from Canada because, as showed in the presentation before, India is a producer of lentils, but also a consumer. So other pulses might come from other countries, for example, Latin America, like Argentina, Venezuela. We are importing from other countries as well, like Tanzania, for example. Other pulses are coming from Madagascar, and we have our own agent in Myanmar, which we are working for as well for the mung beans, and for example, pigeon peas as well.
Okay, thank you. So that's good to know, particularly since we have a lot of attendees from India and I believe from Tanzania as well today. So they might be interested in reaching out to you. And my second question for you, if you had to list a top 3 of the biggest issues that you run into as a trader in terms of whether it's quality or sustainability or consistency in delivery, what would you say are the top 3 issues that you face?
One of the things that we have now is the supply chain from Canada, for example. We are seeing very long lead times. China or Asia was also the same, but it seems to be better now. Okay. Australia, for example, also we see very much delays in the logistics. So that's one of the big issues. The second is pesticides that we find on the products. Not every origin is, or not every farmer is so strict on the pesticides, and that's something that's very important for us because otherwise the product is not okay for the EU market. So it cannot enter to the European Union. The third thing that I would say is insect control. Mostly, well, for example, in black beans, for example, it's a product which is very sensitive. From Ethiopia, for example, on the white beans, you see that there's a high risk on insects. So that's also something that we are very careful about. So those are the 3 main issues.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. And for our potential suppliers, this is probably an area where you could gain a competitive advantage. Thank you, Martin. And I would now like to invite Jelle to come online. Jelle is the Managing Director, Jelle Kueper, Managing Director of Evers Specials. They are the largest bean sprout specialist in Europe. And like Martin, they also work very closely with their suppliers to help improve traceability and compliance. And they are also looking for new suppliers. Jelle, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Tonya. Let me start the presentation. I cannot see the presenter mode yet.
1 second. You should have it now.
Yes. Thank you. All right, thank you, Tonya. I'd be happy to tell some more about this very special niche market in Europe for mung beans, the market for sprouting. Let me first introduce my company. Who are we? We are specialists in growing mung bean sprouts for more than 50 years. We are at the moment the biggest sprout producer in Europe, and we hope to be your future partner in mung bean for export to Europe. Let me first tell something more about our growing process, so you have a little bit an idea of what happens at our side of the story. We start off with the mung beans as our raw material. Of course, we have to store it, and we grow our mung bean sprouts in the dark in growing cells. And before that, we wash and fill the growing cells with the mung beans. We are a highly automated company. Despite this automation, we employ almost 100 people at our site in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. So once the sprouts have germinated, it's a very quick process, and we will harvest within a week after germination. We will harvest the different sprouts. So they need to be sieved and packed, and they need to be cooled and transported and distributed to our customers. We do produce 600 tons of fresh sprouts every week. We do have 18 growing cells, and the harvest of one growing cell can be up to 60 tons every time we harvest. Our customer reach and the market is the largest part of Europe. It happens to be also the part of Europe where the consumption of bean sprouts is the highest per head. It's basically a circle of 800 kilometers around Nijmegen, which involves a large part of France, Germany, Denmark, Belgium, and of course the Netherlands. In the UK, at the moment, we do not have a lot of sales. In this part of our market, Germany, France, Netherlands, and Belgium, we have up to 50% of the market share in fresh mung bean sprouts. This means also that we are in need of a total of 3,000 to 4,000 metric tons of mung beans per year. The packaging that we create is the 10 kg crate, which is mainly used in the Asian restaurants, biggest part of our market. Also for industry like frozen industry, canning, and spring roll industry. We produce often packed in folding boxes. And what is now growing the most is the retail market, where we do the small packaging, which is mainly flow packs of 50 grams to 2 kg. And this volume is increasing due to the trend in healthy lifestyle. Then back to the raw material, our mung beans. Currently 90% of our conventional mung beans are from Myanmar, and we are in direct contact with farmers and processors. Our organic mung beans at the moment we source in China. The basic quality specifications for the sprouting quality of mung beans, which is really a special niche, is the size range of 3.6 to 3.8 millimeters. Uniform fresh color. It needs to be really healthy mung beans, of course free from any foreign objects. And what is also very important is it needs to lead to premium sprouting quality. And what is a good sprout? Our sprouts need to have a bright white hypocotyl, small leaves, very short roots, no brown stripes, and also needs to have a shelf life of preferably 7 days. This is partly, of course, the art of growing the mung beans, but this is also very much determined by the quality of the mung beans and the variety of the mung beans that we use as a base of our process. Then practically, what do you need as documents? Of course, it's listed here. I'm not gonna name them all, but one of them is really important and special to this niche market, and this is the EU import certificate for sprouting. And that one needs to be issued by your local authority. And also, like Diana already told, there needs to be a control system in place in your country. Of course, that's something special also to your authority, and they need to be guided in the ins and outs of this. And I must say we are well experienced in helping you to set this up in coordination with your local authority. So if there are any issues there, we would really like to help. So I will not cover this very deeply, but like Diana already told, there is special EU legislation, and the reason for that is that food safety for seeds for sprouting is a really special issue in Europe. The European consumer is used to eat the sprouts mostly raw and uncooked, which means there are microbiological risks and they need to be controlled. This is the top priority in everything we do in the sprouting business. So the 4 regulations are very important. 2 of those are really direct affecting you. I've highlighted them. One is because of the traceability requirements. You really need to know from which farmer the mung beans are being sourced. And also the certification requirements, like I already said. So what is the impact of these EU legislation for us, for the European sprouting industry? We ourselves need to be approved by the competent authority. We need to have this import certificate, otherwise we are not in line with the legislation for every batch that we use if we source outside of Europe. And we need to do a release test before we use a batch of mung beans. So this is a really elaborate test which is very well defined in the EU legislation. This is the reason that it has no use to do any tests on the batches when they are still in your country. We have to do it anyway. So the consequence of this is that a bean parcel that is found infected cannot be used by us. This is a brief impression of the testing facility that we have. I will skip that. And what is then important for you? That is that you have to have the traceability in place, that your operators in the supply chain need to work according to good hygiene practice, and that your authority is responsible for controlling and signing the certificate. So we have done long range of development in China and Myanmar, and I will skip this one, but as you can see here, whatever we do in building up a relationship will take several years, and this is also our aim. We do not buy blindly. We do want to set up cooperation, partnerships, and we acknowledge that it will take some time in order to create a good foundation of our future trade together. So we are very open with this, with a long-term view on the future. In Myanmar, this has been very successful. In 2015, we sourced less than 5% of our raw material from Myanmar, and now we purchase almost 90%, which means the sales of 3,000 to 4,000 metric tons a year. So the question is, will you be part of our next project? What do we need to do in this case? Like I already said, we need to take care of traceability, and also we need to set up the cooperation with the local authority, and we need to educate the supply chain. So what are the practical issues that we need to pay attention to if you want to be our partner for the future? The climate in your country needs to be suitable, which means very, very small chance of rain during the harvesting season, because if there's humidity during the harvest, the quality results will be affected. We need to have the right variety because it's a top priority that we have a good, the option of producing good sprouts, good quality sprouts. We need to take a lot of attention to the threshing procedures because that's where a lot goes wrong on the farming side because of, for instance, contamination by livestock and birds, the storage and the processing. These are also issues that are very important and need to be set up very well along the whole supply chain. What is the practical result of this? There's a necessity that there is the option of an organized supply chain. Like I said, we do not buy blindly. There needs to be some form of organization and communication from farmer to collectors to processors and finally to the exporters in order to build a practical way of dealing with all these issues. So this all means dedicated production from sowing to harvesting and processing is really necessary. So please feel free to ask any questions. You can have this presentation for future reference. These are my contact details, and I get back to Tonya.
Thank you very much, Jelle. And I'm just going to take over the presentation from you. There we are. I would, while I invite the rest of our panel back online to join us, Jelle, I have a question. Following up from your presentation, you showed us the efforts and the results, the great results that you achieved in Myanmar by working together with the suppliers. What is, obviously, a difference is that Myanmar now meets the EU standards, but in terms of quality of the product, in terms of the issues that you face with the product, what would you say is the biggest difference between how it used to be when you started and how it is now?
One big difference is that we selected the right variety in Myanmar. So this has taken some years to get to the right varieties. And another is that we did trainings along the supply chain and that we really found after a while, I must say, the right partners to do our business with. So it is this cooperation where we were able to support in Myanmar with trainings, even to the level of farmers, that really made the difference.
Okay. And was that something that you did as part of a program? Was it something you did with the government, or did you work with individual suppliers?
This was part of a cooperation with the government. So the European Commission contracted us to support with the trainings, and we also had a good cooperation with the Myanmar government from the agricultural department. Okay. So it's really essential that all the operators, all the players in this field are willing to really invest and take their part of the effort.
Okay, some great information there for our audience as well. Thank you, Jelle. And I'm going to follow up with a question for Barbara and or Diana. And that is a question about novel foods on the EU market. Which pulses are best suited to serve as novel foods for the EU market or the European market in general?
Well, I believe, and Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong, there are, in terms of pulses, there haven't been any new novel foods added recently, but applications of pulses are being added to the novel food, or are getting the novel food status, which allows them to be sold on the European market. And one of the most recent one, it's a protein isolate from mung beans. It's not yet approved, but a study came out last year that was commissioned by the European Commission to prove the safety or the suitability of this protein isolate for human consumption. It is safe for human consumption, so it's very likely that mung bean protein isolate is going to obtain its novel food status. And in the UK, it is already allowed as a novel food, this protein isolate. And well, this kind of protein isolates are becoming very important for the plant-based protein industry, because they are used in applications to replace animal products, mung beans especially, for egg replacement, but also used as flour for different, I don't know, pastas and breads and so on.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay. And I think I can add something very quickly for our audience as well. We originally intended to have another speaker join us for the Q&A session, and unfortunately he's ill, so he had to drop out. But he told me in preparation for this webinar that pigeon peas and peas in general are becoming very interesting in the medical industry, as well as in the industrial food and beverage industry, but particularly in the medical industry, because the protein isolate that is derived from peas actually helps to speed up the healing process in people who are sick. So I'm assuming that right now he's eating a lot of protein isolate made from peas as well. But what is interesting about that is that he said that for peas, you can easily get about 600 to 700 euros per ton on the market. And for the protein isolate that is derived from the peas, that price goes up to 6,000 or 7,000 euros. So basically 10 times as much. And what you also see, and Diana, I'm not quite sure if that applies to what you were saying about mung beans as well. He said that demand is increasing, and you also see that the quality requirements and requirements to enter the market are not higher for the protein isolates than they are for regular pulses. Is that the same that you see with mung beans?
I actually don't have information for that yet, because it's not yet, since it's not allowed yet as a novel food, there are no regulations about it, but I can expect that will be the case too.
Okay, so definitely something to keep our eye on.
Yeah.
A question for Jelle and Martin, and this is a question about the European CIF price range, Rotterdam, for pigeon peas and mung beans. What is the competitive range at this moment? Martin, can I start with you?
We have different different grades of mung beans. For example, it really depends on the origin, because there's a difference in quality. If you have Australia, for example, they have another price range than China. But the cheapest origin at the moment that we know of is South America, which has very competitive pricing for a feed application, for example, which is around $800. Is it for a food application? It's around $900.
Okay, thank you. And Jelle, is that the same range that you work with for sprouting?
No, I would love to buy it at prices, but unfortunately, no. It's a niche market, and there's also a premium in the price because of the effort that has to be done to realize this. We are used to buy FOB, so and also the transport by sea has been varying in cost, so I cannot just easily transform this to a Rotterdam price. But to give a rough impression, we have to pay like between $1,100 $1,200 FOB in that kind of range.
Okay, that is definitely a very different price range from what Martin is dealing with. In terms of payment, for the both of you, a follow-up question. In terms of new exporters, so new suppliers, what are your payment terms? Martin, Jelle?
Yeah, okay. Jelle can go first.
I see you too.
Yeah. We pay cash against documents usually.
Okay. Martin, would you like to go, or should I ask Barbara first?
No, well, for us, it's if it's a new supplier, we also well, it depends on the products, but after arrival, sometimes it's payment, but it's in it can also be partially against documents. It's that's open to discussion.
Okay, Barbara, any addition?
No, I had nothing to add. Sorry.
Okay, I thought I saw your microphone come on. Okay, thank you for that, Martin and Jelle. And I have a very specific question here from Alan for Jelle. Alan says, we produce 6,000 tons of mung beans per year, KS20 and N26 nylon. I think Jelle knows what that is. And what quality do you produce and or demand at Aver Specials?
Well, unfortunately, I do not know what KS20 and N26 nylon means, so I cannot really answer this directly. We have experienced that it's a real balance between variety and climate, and so we have to test. That's how we like to go on. We just need to see what is happening in a potential country. What are the farmers doing? What is working best for the farmers? And is this also for us a good sprout variety? You cannot easily just transplant one variety from one region to another region, because probably it will not work for the farmers. In general, I can look into that with Alan in more detail separately, and we can try to find out what he has available and if it's useful for us.
Okay, so Alan, the presentation, the link to the recording is on its way, and Jelle's contact details are there, so do feel free to follow up. Thank you very much, panel. I see that Martin has disappeared from our screens. I hope he can still hear us. I'd like to very much thank our panel, because we're running out of time. I'd like to thank our panel for being present today, for giving your presentations. Barbara and Diana, thank you very much for sharing your insights as to the market analysis and market entry requirements. Jelle, thank you very much for giving us some information about the mung beans market and for answering our questions. And Martin, if you can hear us, thank you very much as well for sharing your insights about the general pulses market in Europe and what you look for as a trader. Thank you all, and again, thank you for being present today. And right now I'd like to invite Arthur to come back and share a few words with us just before we close the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Tonia. So let me share also the presentation one more time. So we've almost reached the end of this webinar, and before we go back to Tonia one more time for the closing of this webinar, I'd like to take a minute to highlight our online platform. To go there, you can type into your browser or in Google cbi.eu/market information, and there you will see that we have over 20 market studies in the grains and pulses sector. These are about the sector as a whole. They are about doing tips to do business or to find buyers, and we have a number of studies on promising export products. So let me show you just shortly in a quick peek view what that looks like on the website. So this is the CBI website. Let me go back one more second. So if you go to cbi.eu, you will see in the middle that we have here a box that says market information. So at CBI, we support market information in 14 sectors. So of course, today we are interested in grains, pulse, and oilseeds. There we have it with a beautiful picture of lentils. And what you will see here, same as I showed earlier, we have sector studies. For example, we have a study that's very often looked at, which is the requirements your product should comply with. We have tips to find buyers, which basically gives you all the tools to build your list of customers, of potential customers that you can then later contact. And then we have product studies. So today, for example, we've looked at mung beans. We have a study on mung beans. We have a study on lentils. And we have also a study on dried beans. let me show that to you. All studies have the same build-up, so that's important to know. We always have two studies, one which is called the market potential and another on the market entry. So the logic behind this is that when you're a new exporter, then you probably first want to select the markets that you want to address. That information can be found here. So you see firstly a short product description, then there's a chapter on what makes Europe an interesting market, in this case for dry beans, and then there's a chapter on the 6 top importing countries from Europe and the trends. And the way these studies work, it's with hyperlinks. We have lots of hyperlinks, so if you're only interested in the countries, you click it. Here you have the countries. Then you will see that Italy is the #1 importer for dried beans, and you have the other countries, and then you simply go back like this. And then, for example, if you want to read a little bit more about the trends, works in the same way. Then you can see the trends. You can download this research to print it, to take it with you. And if after reading the study you still have any questions, you can also ask these questions here. And you can also find webinar recordings like the one we did today as well next to the studies. Then one last thing I would like to say about the topics that were addressed today. When you look at the studies, you will see there's a publication date for mung beans 2019, which is a little bit older, and for lentils also 2019. So at this moment, you've already seen a sneak preview during the presentations of Barbara and Diana. We're finishing these studies and they will be published completely new 2022 versions at the 10th of December of this year. And then we will also at the same time, next to mung beans and lentils, we will have a new study on pigeon peas. So I really recommend everybody to subscribe to the newsletter. And when you do that, you will get a monthly overview of all the new studies on the website, and then you immediately see when we have published that new study. But for the people that are watching right now, I can already say it's the 10th of December, so please note that down. With that, I would like to, before leaving, I would like to firstly thank the researchers, Diana and Barbara from Profundo, for their presentation. And especially I would like to thank Jelle and Martin for the valuable importer insights that they've given us today. And of course, last but not least, Tonia for the excellent moderation. And of course, all of you for attending today. That's it for me. Back to you, Tonia.
Thank you very much, Arta. I was still muted. And for our audience, just finalizing in the last minute, we are running out of time. We have run out of time already. So as Arta said already, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that the webinar was useful for you. We hope that we gave you some insights and information that you're going to be able to use to enter the European market. As I said at the beginning, the webinar has been recorded, so we are going to send you a link to the recording of the webinar, a link to the presentations, and a link to the market study, which is going to be published on the CBI website on the 10th of December, as Arta has already said. As we close the webinar, you're going to get a very quick evaluation form. It takes less than 1 minute to fill out, and we would very much appreciate it if you would fill out that evaluation form, because it gives us some information about how we can improve. If you think this webinar was really, really horrible, give us a 1. If you think it was fantastic, give us a 10. And if you think something else, give us a number that is somewhere in between a 1 and a 10. For those of you who export other products to Europe, or who are considering exporting other products to Europe as well, I am actually trying to share my screen. There we are. There are a number of upcoming webinars that CBI is organizing, and one of these webinars might be of interest to you. You can go to cbi.eu/events to register for the webinar or to just get some additional information. That's all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Have a great day. Goodbye.